for checking out the Indy Handshake Wrestling Podcast. My name is Paul Ponce, and I am joined today by Hook Bomberry. How are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. Nice to see you again. I think it's been about a decade or so pleasure to see your handsome face once again, live and direct on Zoom. So cool.
Yeah, we kind of had a very similar experience, although you obviously became a wrestler and I did not. Whereas, we were both fans hanging around APW. I was volunteering for them, but you were a fan for them. You went and trained on with Pro Wrestling Iron. I did that for a little bit, but I ended up mostly just helping out there. Northern California wrestling scene, I'd say you were there for a pretty good amount of the big boom of indie wrestling in California.
I would say so.
Yeah, SoCal, Northern California, you were there at the inception of PWG, which is a big deal. Recently had one of your tag team partners on, Top Gun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Love that guy. Shout out to Top Gun Tallier.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But let's get started a little bit before that. How did you get into wrestling? And what always interests me more is how you found out about independent wrestling, because I feel like that's a whole different jump to liking wrestling is, oh, wait, there's other wrestling besides, WWF, WCW, and whatever. So let's get into that.
Okay, perfect. Well, as far as wrestling goes, I grew up in the 80s. I'm a little bit older. So I grew up when Hulk Hogan was around, and it was just what everyone did. So, I grew up watching Hulk Hogan, Coco Beware, The Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake, Brutus the Barber Beefcake. So I grew up in that era of watching professional wrestling. I have two older brothers, so it's just something that we did as kids together. My oldest brother, Benjamin, he was really into wrestling too. So it was kind of something that me and him shared. My other brother, Willie, wasn't so much into it, but it's just something that we always watched throughout the 80s. There was a time when we didn't have cable for a few years. And then we picked back up around the Attitude Era or before, a little bit before, and started watching it again. So just something that I grew up watching. I still watch, and I watched throughout my whole life. So, yep.
Nice. And then how do we go from there to discovering the world of independent wrestling?
Well, like many people, I think my start with independent wrestling came from Beyond the Mat. So checking out Beyond the Mat, seeing that documentary. I was already what you'd call like a smart wrestling fan, quote unquote. I grew up with the internet, so we were already looking at all the dirt sheets that they had back in the day. And then Beyond the Mat came out, so we checked that out, and then we were exposed to All Pro Wrestling with the famous segment with Roland and Modest and Tony Jones. So that's where I got my start in independent wrestling. And then I realized, well, watching the movie, I'm like, what? That's in the Bay Area? It's sick. So I saw the Gym War shows that they were showing on there, like Max Justice yelling at that fan. I was like, oh, man, that's badass. So, from there, I looked at APW. I believe the first APW show I ever went to was the first King of the Indies tournament that they had out in King City, I believe, where Christopher Daniels won, So the Fallen Angel. So that was super cool too, because I had become an indie wrestling fan. I did tape trading and all that too. So, I knew all the big names back in the day for indie wrestling, and it was like Chris Daniels and Mike Quackenbush and all these guys. So, yeah, I grew up. I came up around that era when those guys were doing good. So.
And then what made you decide that it's something you wanted to do, that you wanted to start training?
Man, so that, again, is something that we always did. I mean, growing up as a kid, I was we were kind of wild kids. So first we got into like grappling, me and my buddies. So we watched a lot of UFC, the early UFCs. We did just grappling. And then we started doing backyard wrestling. So it became, it's around the time Mick Foley had his little promo that he did on Raw, where he talked about all his backyard wrestling. So me and a bunch of my buddies, we started Palo Alto Wrestling in Palo Alto, California, where we did backyard wrestling. And then from there, once I learned, about indie wrestling and the fact that you could train to be a pro wrestler right in Hayward, California with APW, I decided probably around 16 or 17 that that's what I wanted to do. And then as soon as I turned 18, it was around the time of the second King of the Indies tournament and all the stuff that happened with APW and their trainers leaving and starting their own school. So I was involved in all that, because I was planning on starting at APW. I went and met with Roland. I never signed a contract. The guy's like a used car salesman. So at the time, he was like trying to get me to sign my first time ever meeting him, but I didn't, thankfully. And
Yeah.
thankfully, just for my pocketbook, not to say anything bad about those guys, but and then Modest and Donovan, along with some of the other guys, started Pro Wrestling Iron. And my 18th birthday, I think I signed up. So it's something I always wanted to do.
Very nice. And then how'd you find, once you started training, what was it like training with guys like Modest and Morgan and all them? Like, what was your experience like, and what was like the big, shocks that came along with it?
Probably the biggest shock is, man, it's tough. It's hard. It's hard work. It's not something easy. So yeah, I think they really instilled I guess that respect for the business into us, because nothing was easy. Even the warm-ups, the training, and was the main thing that was surprising to me. I thought I would be more of a natural, all my backyard wrestling experience, but yeah, I think the main thing was, it was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. And another thing too, my main trainer when I first started was Dancing Rick Thompson. So he was an old school 70s wrestler from the San Francisco area. I think he did a lot of the Cow Palace shows. He trained Mike Modest. He trained some of the earlier guys at APW. And man, he was phenomenal. He was great. I learned so much from him. Dancing Rick Thompson. I think he moved out to Texas. I know Apollo Khan, our old friend from Pro Wrestling Iron. I know he kept in contact with him for a while, but yeah, I think that was pretty awesome. And then, as I said, I grew up an APW fan, so just having the opportunity to learn from guys like Bison Smith, rest in peace, Vinny Massaro, who I watched your episode with Vinny, so that was cool.
Oh, very nice.
And then Modest and Donovan, of course, was really great. But at the same time, they were busy going to Japan, so they came back and forth, and
Yeah.
we knew shit was serious when they were there. Like, hey, it's going to be a hard day of training, because they were really good at it. So yeah, I had a great time. I really appreciate everything those guys taught me. So
Yeah, me and our old buddy Jesus, we just talked to Modest a few weeks ago, actually, about a month ago. And he was talking a lot about Rick Thompson. He was like, that guy does not get the credit that he deserves as far as, basically building a training program for wrestling in the Bay Area. Like the same program APW still uses to this day, basically.
mm-hmm.
Like, it's pretty crazy when you think about it, like how influential he actually was to the area. And it's like, I feel like you have to be a hardcore nerd to recognize that fact.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
and he was phenomenal. Even my very first match, if I remember correctly, it was who was it? Was it me and Jet Taylor? Me and Jet Taylor versus Apollo and Dancing Rick Thompson at that hot, I guess, fights for Pro Wrestling Iron. So I thought it was awesome to be able to wrestle him too live in a match. So, and I don't know how old he was at the time. He had to be in his 50s or even his 60s, but man, he could still go. So yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit. Because he put together that program, the manual, all that stuff that they used to use. So yeah, phenomenal wrestler.
What was it like, at this point, like you said, you were smart, you were tape trading, you're doing this stuff, and now you're working on shows and they're working with Noah, and now you got like Masawa on the same card that you're on. Like, what is going through your head during that kind of situation?
Well, first off, I want to say I had a cat and I had two cats. I had Masawa and Kawada, who were my cats. So at the time, that was phenomenal. It was surreal. It was crazy. It was a huge. Still to this day and age, that mid '90s All Japan wrestling still my favorite wrestling. So yeah, to be on the same. My very first show I was ever on was headlined by Masawa. So. To have a debut like that was, just unthinkable just a year earlier. So, yeah, it was crazy. I don't even know how to put it into words, but it was awesome.
And what was it like? Do you have any interaction with him as far as, anything in the area? I mean, you're working on the same show, so, but he's one of those guys he's kind of larger than life. So,
yeah, I mean, Not really. We're kind of the young boys, as they say. So we gave them little handshakes, of course. But something I do remember is they all smoked like chimneys. They smoked cigarettes, which was just different. You're not used to that coming in from an athletic standpoint. But I remember we did a show at a high school, and they had their own locker room, all the Japanese guys. But yeah, they were smoking just in the locker room of a high school, which is, to me, it was
Yeah.
crazy because it's totally against the rules. But we let them do what they wanted to do. But yeah, it was. They were super nice, though. I did another thing where we did a tryout for Noah as well. Another time when they came out, because they came out 2 different times. Our debut show, and then they came out and did a series of shows for us another time as well. So yeah, we did a tryout for them as well. Which, to be honest, I wish I would have done a lot better. It was, I mean, they on stretching. So if you guys do want to go to Japan and train in Japan, I would say work on your stretching, do some yoga, and do a lot of body weight exercises, because that was one thing. I was not flexible at all. So I remember they had me run through stretches, and I just saw them looking at each other like, what the fuck? This guy can't bend at all. So yeah, it was definitely a learning experience.
You started afterward going into the SoCal scene a little bit, just starting off with doing the RevPro shows, and then eventually PWG. But it's pretty early on. I mean, you were only what, I think if this thing's right, you're like less than 10 matches into your pro career, and then you're already doing like shows like in SoCal and everything. So what's that like? You're on a show, you just started wrestling, you're on shows with Masawa, you're also like traveling and doing shows in other places. So I don't know, what's that like? What did you find different about like the SoCal scene versus the Northern California scene, all that stuff?
Well, the SoCal scene, I think, is a lot more lucha inspired. So I thought that was different. How that all came about is I was wrestling out there in Sacramento for Big Ugly. He runs Supreme Pro Wrestling at the time, and I think they brought in some guys from RevPro to do a weekend show, and I just happened to be working the show, and I guess they liked my work, so they invited me down for some shows down there too. Yeah, but that that was something I always wanted to do, is get out and get my name known. I didn't want to just be a local wrestler. And I had always heard all these stories about the reason some other guys left APW is because they weren't given the opportunity to travel and do their own thing and try to make a career out of it. So I was at Iron, I kind of just wanted to do that. Like, hey, if you guys are going to give me the freedom to do it, I'm going to try to go out there and make a name for myself. So the only way to do that in this business is travel around, meet people, and put on good matches, or try to. So
Eventually, PWG starts up and you start teaming with Top Gun Talwar, which is great because he's a funny dude. One of the best tag team names ever, Gunning for Hookers.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and when did you decide to start getting into more tag team wrestling as well?
Well, I don't think I really decided to do that. It's just the way things worked out. They put me with someone. So shout out to Top Gun, though. He was a great guy. I guess I was always known more. I mean, I always wanted to be more of a serious wrestler, but I was a little undersized and some other factors. I had gotten injured. I had broken my leg. So
let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, I broke my leg in training at Iron, wrestling with the great Sarah Del Rey. So we were training with Sarah Del Rey and just had a little mishap and snapped my leg in half. And that was right at the beginning of my wrestling career. I don't even know how long I had been doing it. I was fresh out of high school. So yeah, maybe my first or second year in, I broke my leg seriously and have a rod in there and all that still to this day. So I think that slowed me down a lot, to be honest. And I never really fully recovered from that injury. So yeah, I had to adjust my style a little bit, and me and Top Gun did a little bit more comedy stuff, and just to try to have fun with the fans. So, but prior to that, my very first match in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla was with Apollo. It was Apollo versus me and Apollo versus Hardcore Kid in Alcatraz, and then I wrestled Super Dragon in the Badass Mother tournament. And yeah, I did so many shows with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, so But yeah, it wasn't a conscious decision to become a tag team wrestler, but yeah, here in in wrestling, the promoters put you with who they want you with. So I think we just were a one shot excuse me, a one shot thing, me and Top Gun, probably just like an opening match. Hey, let's put Hook and Top Gun together, have them wrestle some other local guys, Quicksilver and Chris Bosch or something, and then see how it goes. And then yeah, we just kept teaming up because it was fun.
And how was that, your mindset as far as adapting a little bit to, you were starting off at Pro Wrestling Iron, which was very, like you said, more on the serious athletic side of wrestling. They're like, we're going to take this very seriously. We're going to have, you're going to put on clinics of chain in the beginning of matches. Like it's going to be very, specific. And then you go to a little bit, PWG, which also has great wrestling, but there's a lot more of like a tongue-in-cheek atmosphere to PWG. So how was that adapting for you?
Well, for me, I kind of got more into that style of wrestling as I learned how to wrestle better, as I got better at my craft. Because really, in my opinion, the way the point of wrestling is to get over. It's not exactly all the technical. Not to have a technical masterpiece, because if nobody cares about the match, it's like it's not over. So I kind of had to adapt more of that style, just as I learned how to work, because like I said, you're trying to get a reaction from the crowd. So with that, you need to have some personality and stuff. So I kind of learned that through traveling a lot, is kind of like not every audience is into just chain wrestling, and you go through this formula. A lot of people need more than that. And just even myself growing up, the guys I grew up watching and we're such big fans of, they weren't doing that style of wrestling. It was more just getting over with the crowd. So as I got later into my career and progressed and kind of learned how to work, I tried to do a lot less. Less is more, as they say. So I always take that type of advice to heart. I try to do as little as I could and still get paid, and be safe and not get hurt. So that was what all that came down to. I didn't want to get hurt. I wanted to get paid, and I wanted to have easy and fun matches. I didn't want to do anything too complicated. So yeah, being able to wrestle in a place like Southern California, you kind of learned how to do that a lot. Yeah. So for me, it was an adjustment. It was an adjustment, but I think it was an adjustment that I would have made anyway, learning how to work in front of a crowd.
Yeah. On the Vinny episode, he mentions like the best. He's like, the best thing is when you do just a suplex and the crowd pops. You're like, oh, it's gonna be an easy night. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, really, the funniest time I had in my career is for Jesse Hernandez, and it's no knock to anyone else, but Jesse Hernandez in Empire Pro Wrestling out of San Bernardino, California. Just because those were the type of guys he had. We all had easy matches, and they had a hot crowd that was just conditioned or used to just that simple style of wrestling. So you really got to learn how to work in front of a crowd. So yeah, I had a great time wrestling with Jesse Hernandez. And like I said, that would have been something that I would have done regardless, just as you learn how to work. You want to be more safe and take less risk and have an easy match. So
yeah, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And our mutual friend Jesus, he told me to ask you about the match at the dojo with Bison Smith.
Okay, so that was I want to say it was one of my first singles match. It may have been my first ever singles match. I don't know if you have the records, but yeah, it could have been my first ever singles match was with Bison Smith.
It looks like it's like maybe the fourth. It looks like your first one's against Donovan Morgan.
I had a singles match with Donovan. Nice.
The dates might be a little screwy, but yeah, according to this, Donovan Morgan defeats Hook Bomberry on December 21st, 2002.
Well, shout out to Donovan. I love Donovan, man. That was my dude. So Donovan, I hope you're doing well. I think he's out there in Florida. He has me on LinkedIn, and so we talked a little bit. I think he's like selling mortgages or some shit. So shout out to you, Donovan, wherever you are.
You guys talked on LinkedIn?
We talked on LinkedIn. Yeah, he added me. So I'm like, fuck it.
I think you're the only person I've ever heard say that they actually talked to someone on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I have a LinkedIn, and don't send me no fucking connection request, guys. I don't want to add you on my LinkedIn. I'm a professional now. Yeah. So Bison was just cool, man. We had a hell of a match for my career. It was one of my first matches. So just being able to, another one of my first matches was with Christopher Daniels, and I guess Donovan as well. I know I had a singles match with Mike Modis as well, but people really liked that one that I had with Bison. I've been asking Jesus if he could upload it in HD for me on one of his platforms, because I know he has all these different wrestling platforms. Put that match on TV for me, okay?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, so we just had a hell of a match. It was at our old dojo in Hayward or San Leandro, wherever it was, for Pro Wrestling Iron at one of our gym shows. It was a great match. Again, rest in peace, Bison. But yeah, Bison was one of the guys that he was super helpful. He would come out Friday nights for our open gym. He would train with all of us in between touring with Japan and Puerto Rico, IWA Puerto Rico. So he was always super helpful, always willing to help all the young guys. And I don't know if he requested that match with me, but they put me up with him, I guess, because the size difference. It was just entertaining for the fans to see someone his size go against me, who I'm only 5'5" at that time, like 150 pounds. So going against a 6'4", 300-pound dude, it was just an awesome match. Tons of fun. He threw me all around the ring. Jesus Cruz, put that on the internet so I could share it with these guys.
There you go. I'm going to bug him again. Yeah, I loved Bison Stiff, man. I used to do his website. And he would like send me Japanese magazines and stuff. And so I just got to talk to him like in between his tours of Japan, just like hearing about his tales there, shit like, accidentally eating horse meat and stuff like that over there because he had no idea what the hell he was eating. It was a really nice guy, man. I miss that guy. I think, there's a lot of people you meet in indie wrestling, and not all of them are the best as far as,
say the least.
But Bison was a really sweet dude. I really like that guy.
Yeah, Bison was awesome, and he had some great stories too. One that always stuck out to me is he'd always be telling Apollo, like, man, in Japan they love black people, right? Like Scorpio's guy's over, he's fucking all these chicks and all this stuff. So I'm like, oh dude, that's awesome. And then he said he was like at some small town and he was trying to tan, and he went to some place and it was called Be Black, the tanning salon. Then when he went in there, all the Japanese guys had dreadlocks and stuff. So I always got a kick out of that story. So, so if you're in Japan, check out Be Black Tanning Salon. Go get your tan on, all you pro wrestlers.
Oh, that's insanity.
Yeah. So
a lot of people I noticed, okay, when I was working in indie wrestling, I remember a lot of people would come in groups, like they would have 4 or 5 SoCal guys on one show up here. Mm-hmm. And then like the same thing down there. Like you said, like you worked Apollo down there, that kind of thing. Yeah. Any fun road stories or incidents that happened along the way, since everyone...
I don't know how many are appropriate. Yeah, it's been quite a long time. I was a single young man at that time. But no, we did tons of fun. The first things those guys did in Southern California when I went down there was introduce me to Tijuana. So we did a lot of Tijuana trips after those Southern California shows. So so shout out to all those RevPro guys. You know who you are, but you guys showed me all about Tijuana. So we went out to Tijuana a bunch of times. I mean, there's so many different crazy stories that I probably shouldn't get into on a family show. But yeah, we had a good time. Yeah, tons of fun shows. I would usually travel with Apollo. But if you know Apollo, he's pretty level-headed. So we didn't get too crazy. But yeah, lots of fun times going out to Tijuana after all the shows. But a lot of people, what they would do, they party in San Diego till 2 a.m. and then you could keep partying in Tijuana all night long. So yeah, we'd go out there a lot and spend time at some questionable establishments out there. So yeah, awesome times. And then I got a lot of stories, Sam, but I'm not going to go into them right now. Sorry, guys.
No problem.
I don't want to bury anyone.
You got trained in a hard style as far as wrestling. You guys, like Modest, when even like a month ago when I was talking to him, he was like, you never have to slap a leg. You never have to slap anything. He's all, if you hit something, it makes noise. So he's very much like that style. When you wrestled someone new at any point, did any of them kind of like, hey, whoa, man, like what's going on here?
I think sometimes we may have got that reputation, but I think everyone wanted to be tough, so no one wanted to complain, you know.
Mm.
But I know sometimes people would be like joking around, like, "Oh, you're gonna stiff me tonight" or whatever. But yeah, no one was ever really pissed off about it. But yeah, we did work a little bit more snug of a style, so there were no leg slaps and that and all that stuff. So stuff that bothers me is like leg slaps with forearms, because forearms do make a sound. So if you're gonna leg slap on a forearm, come on, man,
Yeah.
throw a better forearm. Come on, get it together, bud.
Yeah, there's that nice magical area right here that's
Yeah,
like it
exactly. Yeah,
slaps that it doesn't, knock him out. So it's like a
yeah.
very nice.
And that is one thing when I wrestled Bison that I remember is that every time he forearmed me, I got like a flash of light. So like I guess that's what they say when they mean when they say you see stars, because every time he
Yeah.
forearmed me, it'd be like this flash of light because I was a big dude. So, um, but yeah, as far as anyone ever complaining, no.
Okay.
If anything, I think we're ahead of the curve because after that, more and more people started doing more of a strong style, as they say, or more snug. So I think we're ahead of the curve as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, I thought that whole scene, especially like all that would morph into what like ROH and all that would become, which is like
Yeah.
mixing. They would get like lucha guys, and they would mix lucha with like puro strong style stuff mixed with like technical wrestling. And now pretty much you have to have all of it. You have to be able to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, nobody takes you seriously. Basically,
Yeah.
It's
Unless
like,
you're over on Twitter, and then it
yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Yeah,
Then it doesn't matter. Then you could suck.
yeah. Because I was just thinking, like at the time, you could have a guy that's just like great technically and like he'll never do like a suicide dive and everyone's like that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like no matter who you're, even if you're 300 pounds, they're like, well, but can you do anything off the top rope? And it's like,
I know, yeah.
all right.
Aren't you gonna do a dive? Come on, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that whole scene. I think King of Indies, the second one that APW put on, should get a lot of the credit for that because they kind of brought together the whole Ring of Honor roster. I don't know if that happened before Ring of Honor. It was right before, wasn't it?
I think it was before. Yeah. I think King Indies was a big inspiration for stuff like PWG and Ring of Honor and yeah.
Because basically they took the roster from King of Indies and that became ROH. So
yeah.
So yeah, I think that Northern California and Southern California both deserve a lot of credit for kind of this new style of pro wrestling that we're seeing nowadays. So.
Yeah, and it was all like very, like you said, ahead of its time in that retrospect. But Pro Wrestling Iron, they were putting on great shows. They had a lot of good stuff going on. What do you think went wrong in the end? Like, why do you think eventually it went away?
I think for that, it's mostly just they weren't the owners of the company weren't always there to manage the company. So they put a lot of faith into other people to handle it for them. Myself included. I mean, I was training beginner wrestlers, and I was only 1 year in. So I didn't think that I was in a position that I should have been training those guys. But yeah, they just had they were really busy with their own careers, traveling around. And then rest in peace, Bison. He passed away too, so I think that affected some of the guys as well. We had a lot of people partying a lot, so yeah, some of the owners love to party too. So I can't knock them. That was just I think it was just a phase that some of them were going through where they kind of let that grab a hold of them. So yeah, shout out to all those guys though. I think they did their best. But it's running a business. Not everyone knows how to do it. So again, I think they did their best. For me, it was more of a work situation. I was working Target like overnight, doing a shitty job to pay rent out there. And so for me, I just didn't want to keep doing that job. So I had to quit. And when I quit, I had to find a new place to live. So I moved down to Southern California. But I still went back and forth with Iron. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall while I was still there. We had some people leave. We had the Thomas Ellies leave out to Chicago. We had Sarah Del Rey leave down to New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo. And again, I think it was just the absence of leadership. We didn't have our leaders there all the time because they're traveling in Japan and, trying to make a name for themselves as well. So I don't blame those guys. I think they did the best they can. in the circumstances. I think what they had sought out to do was great, because they just wanted to have great wrestling and build a relationship with Noah and have all these guys ready from America to go over to Noah. And it just didn't play out the way that they wanted. And again, I think it's just because we didn't have the full-time training staff there that we needed to get us ready for that kind of jump.
And you mentioned EWF a lot as far as a place you really enjoyed working at. What about them made you really drew you to them?
Well, first off, they ran a lot. So I think they ran every other Friday out of Covina. And sometimes they ran every weekend at the time. They would do small little spot shows. So it was just a good place to, if you wanted to wrestle a lot, it was a good place to be, because I was on every show. Jesse, I know people give him a hard time because he doesn't like to pay anyone. But I mean, that agreement I had with Jesse is like, man, if I come to your show, you're fucking paying me. So I got paid for every show. So shout out to Jesse Hernandez. Yeah, he gave me a lot of opportunities. So he put a couple belts on me, some tag titles on me. I had a opportunity to work with a lot of great guys. And like I said, they're also more used to like a more family friendly, easy style. So that's where I really got to learn how to work, interact with the crowd, interact with the kids, a lot of kids there and stuff like that. So you learn how to draw the reaction from the fans, where sometimes, the smart fans, they want to be like cool and stuff, and they don't want to, mark out or whatever, they want to just be like, act like they're part of the show. So I had more fun time wrestling in front of like a family oriented crowd, as opposed to a crowd that's just there for this certain style of wrestling. So
yeah, I think the smart crowd, it's like it can be great and it can also be terrible at times. It's just like, sometimes, especially, they can really just not, even if they're not feeling something, like they're just very much like, well, that's impressive.
Yeah, they kind of tune out. Yeah, and then you don't get the reaction, and then for the performers, it's not as fun. So
yeah,
when you're getting a big reaction from a crowd, it makes the match a lot more fun to perform in, because you have something to play off of. But sometimes those fans, it could be, it's your own fault too, because you got to be able to get over. So if you can't get over with the fans, then maybe that's not the crowd you should be wrestling in front of. But it's just a different style and a different type of reaction that you're able to draw from an EWF crowd that I really enjoyed. And plus, I like working with like their old school, just playing guys, because I didn't see it as a challenge, but it was fun for me to have these matches that I thought were great. They were really fun to do. A lot of times I get, some of my favorite matches just from feel, like, wow, that felt really great. Everyone was reacting the way we wanted them to react. We got pops on the spots we wanted pops, and it built the way we wanted it to build. So wrestling guys like Vision, who's like, he's just a small local guy. A lot of these small local guys that Jesse had, I really like to go out there and just have fun matches with them. And we got great reactions. And I didn't see it as a challenge, but I knew that I had to work really hard to get the type of match that I wanted. So, so it was fun to wrestle those type of people, as opposed to always getting put with the same type of person, So, because I've wrestled all these guys a bunch of times. So being able to wrestle some of these more challenging matches were fun as well.
And what made you decide to finally hang up the boots in the end?
For me to hang up the boots, man, to be honest, I was actually like doing the best I had ever done in my career. I had recently been brought back to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. I was wrestling, tag teaming with TJP. We had our own little group, TJ Hookers, so kind of play off of Gunning for Hookers. We were TJ Hookers, so I got to wrestle with him. And like I said, I learned how to work finally. So it took a few years, but finally I was getting the reactions from the crowd that I wanted. But the main thing is I had injuries. I was banged up. I had I don't know if it was a herniated disc, but I had something going on where I had sciatic pain shooting down one of my legs. And I think it all stems from breaking my legs, never fully recovering, because I was rushing to get back into the ring. So I got a bunch of imbalances in my body that were causing me a lot of pain. And then also, not just that, it was just missing out on doing stuff with my friends outside of wrestling as well. So every weekend having to drive to another town, spend your Friday and Saturday, with your wrestling friends, and just missing out on a lot of opportunities with other people. So that's really what it came down to. I was selling pot at the time too, so I was losing out on money when I was gone on the weekends. That's all my, that type of income I had coming in as well. So, it was just one of those things where it just worked out. But I didn't think I was going to be gone forever. I thought I was just going to maybe take a break. So I went down to an EWF show. I had decided that day, like, you know what? I'm going to quit because they already have me booked for next weekend. The weekend after that, I don't have any free time. I was working full time Monday through Friday. So it was just tough just to have, one day off a week where I wasn't working, which was Sunday usually. So that's really what it came down to. Just missing out opportunities with friends, opportunities to make more money, doing other stuff as well. So it was just a combination of factors. And then at the time, but like I said, I was starting to revitalize my career. So I wish I would have stuck through it a little bit more, but at the time I didn't have the belief. I didn't know how really to train your mind the way I feel like you need to train your mind in order to be successful, because I still had those doubts in my mind. Oh, you're too small. There's not a spot for you in the business, that type of stuff, to where you could actually make money. So I had a lot of, that type of talk. So I feel like if I would know what I knew now and applied that to my younger career, then I could have gone a lot further. Because you got to believe, you got to believe that you're going to make it. So that would be my advice to all the upcoming pro wrestlers. Just believe in yourself, believe in your skills, and know that there is a spot for you in this business to where you can make money, because it's just about getting over. So as long as you could get over, you can make money. So I just wish I would have realized that. And then just seeing how the business changed too, how people have figured out new and exciting ways to make money. So that's really cool too. So I wish I would have stuck with it. And I'm seeing that hard work pay off for a lot of my friends. So I'm happy because a lot of the people that I worked with back in the day are now finally, it's starting to pay off. And they're being able to be successful. So, but I couldn't imagine wrestling another 10 years without getting that success. So at the same time, it's kind of like a flip, it's like, well, it's paying off, but it did take another 10 years since I've left. So,
and then also, like, compared like then and now it's like, okay, you get booked, boom, you get like a pro wrestling tee store. You can like,
exactly.
At the time, YouTube was shit.
Yeah.
It was all like horrible quality videos. You could only upload, I think it's like 10 minutes at a time. Remember when YouTube was like that?
Yeah.
Like you could only have 10-minute long videos, so you couldn't even put like full matches on there if they were longer than that. Like,
you need a part two.
It was really, and I know that because, I've been scouring YouTube on these interviews, like trying to find footage for stuff that other people have been talking about. And a lot of times when you see the older matches, it'll be like part 1, part 2. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
It's but if you guys want to check out any of my stuff, you can check it out. I always put Hook Bomberry into YouTube, do my little vanity searches, but EWF put a lot of that stuff up that I was talking about. So I think all that whole run I had with EWF, they have the whole shows on YouTube now on their YouTube channel. So you could check that out. You could always check me out on all the old Pro Wrestling Guerrilla DVDs as well. So I'm on I don't even know how many shows I did with those guys. So
speaking of PWG, not as far as the confidence thing, but Scott Lost had a very similar in his last year of wrestling. He was like, "Man, I'm starting to really have fun." He's like, "And I'm about to quit." Shit.
Yeah.
Like he was like,
"That's how it is." Yeah. I was like, "Man, I'm finally starting to get everything together, and I'm hanging up the boots." But at that time, I mean, really, I was in a lot of pain, so that was tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, there'd be times I would go have to drive to urgent care. They were putting shots in my ass, steroids or whatever the hell they put in, some sort of cortisone or some shit. Because there were times where I couldn't get off my couch or out of bed because I was in so much pain, and I still worked full time too. So it was challenging.
Well, it's tough too because when you go to like especially like cons where they have like older wrestlers and stuff that you see, and you go and you see these guys and they're like, their knees are shot and like their hips are shot and they can barely move. And you're kind of like looking at that going like, shit,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Is that what I'm signing myself up for or what?
yeah. And then like, you're looking at them like, and these are guys that were like on WrestleManias and you're like, and they're all fucked up. Like, good Lord.
Yeah. So it's not, yeah, like I was reiterating at the beginning of the interview, it's not an easy business. So
Yeah.
the stuff really hurts. And, you know, sometimes it's just like one bad bump and fucks you up for a long time. So yeah, just, that was the main thing. And like I said too, just missing out on stuff outside of wrestling. You know, I had a lot of other stuff going on at the time as well. So,
is there any like specific thing you look back on in the career and think like, I wish I would have just been able to do this? Well, whether it's like, you know, working in Japan or doing something like, what's the one thing in wrestling where you're like, but fuck, I really wish I would have just been able to do this one thing.
that would have been it. I mean, they used to always tell when I was coming up, like, "Hey, man, we're gonna send you to Japan to train at the Noah dojo." So that was always my dream. So I wish that would have worked out. I think again, a lot of it has to do with my injury. I broke my leg right at the beginning of my career. But when I started, you know, I was only 18. I was in great shape. I was doing pretty good wrestling. I was doing okay. You know, I don't want to put myself over, but I was doing okay. And I think I could have done a lot better had I gone over to Japan and had that experience. Because the people that train in Japanese dojos, I mean, they're pretty much lifers. Once you go through that experience, you're pretty much wrestling the rest of your life, and you'll always have a job in the business. So I wish that was something that would have came through. So yeah, that's the main thing. And then yeah, just wrestling in Japan, being able to have that experience would have been really awesome. And also, I wish I would have just made some real money in the business, you know. So I spent a few years in it, so just to reap some financial success out of it would have been great too.
Well, it's like I had a Taro on here, and you worked
Oh
on a
yeah,
bunch of
shout
shows
out to
with Taro.
Tara.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh yeah, the only money he ever made in wrestling was on that Nikki show on CW."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that's
he's like,
probably
"That's the only
that's
money I ever
payday.
made."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Other than that, it covers like, you know, your meal and your gas, if that. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's if they pay
we
you at
didn't.
all.
Yeah, but I always got paid. That was one thing with me, man. If you're gonna bring me out to the show, you got to give me something, man. I ain't
Yeah.
wrestling shit for free. So
Do you remember working a show for Jesus in San Francisco at the Rock Club, the Rockapulco?
I do. We were we were recently talking about this on another podcast.
And
Yeah,
and
that was good times.
do you remember? So Jesus
I
got all
remember a
these like.
couple of jobbers got really pissed off that night. Who were those jobbers? Were
Oh, I
really
don't
pissed.
know.
I don't know either, but is that the same show you're talking about?
Oh, I don't know. I
Oh,
was
okay.
just there was I just remember he brought a ton of people for that. So there was like a couple 6-man matches and like a couple of tag, like, so there was a lot of luchadors there, but
Okay.
and I was doing the sound, and none of these fucking guys brought music. None of them. Like, all these guys showed
All
up and they're
right.
just like, "Oh, just play something." And I'm like,
Yeah.
and you were one of the few people who actually had a CD for your music.
Nice.
And then I remember, because by the end of the night you were like, "Man, you got a lot of work out of my CD," because I ended up just using random songs off the CD as entrances for everyone else.
Nice. I don't know what it was. If it was it Necro, that would have been funny if everyone had to come out to Necro.
I don't remember,
Some
but
underground rapper from New York. So that'd be funny.
it probably was something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I just remember, I just remember like, okay, I guess these guys will get track 4. I'm just like,
Yeah.
who knows what's gonna happen right now?
Yeah. But I do remember that show. Everyone partied a lot at that show because I don't know if Jesus had an open bar. There was a bar there, but all I remember by the end of the night, everyone was fucked up, and a couple of the wrestlers, a couple of Joe Applebaum's guys, got pissed off that that one of my trainers happened to call them jobbers. So he took
really?
he took a real offense of, and then there was almost a fight outside the venue. Which ask Jesus about that if you're gonna ask about anything.
Okay.
That was funny. It was
Oh,
the Stoner
man.
Brothers too. If we were talking about the jobbers, no offense,
Okay.
Stoner Brothers, you guys are jobbers. I like you guys, but I remember that's that's what you guys got mad about. That, and it was him and Rick Luxury, so they were pissed off that night because they got called jobbers. So sorry guys, we didn't mean it. You guys were great. Thanks.
Well, that's the way, wrestling is. There's a lot of posturing in wrestling. There's a
Yeah.
lot of, the respect thing in wrestling is huge.
Yeah.
It's like everyone acts. It's weird because it can be the silliest thing ever, wrestling, but then it can be the thing that people take very seriously.
I know, sometimes too serious, you know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I like about the new guys is, I guess they're trying to kill those traditions. I don't think they need to be killed because I think there needs to be a certain level of respect for the wrestling business.
Mm,
We owe it to the people that laid the groundwork for us, but at the same time, not everything needs to be so serious, you know.
yeah. I've had like Scott Lost on here was like, he said he hated the fucking handshakes. He just hated it. He was
Yeah,
like, he's like, I don't want to shake everyone's hand. Fuck this.
yeah, it's just silly, we have to walk around and then people do like the little gimmick where they only give you
That's
two
why
fingers.
that's the name of the podcast. It's the Indy
Oh yeah,
Handshake.
Indy Handshake. Yeah,
Like,
so
oh,
yeah,
hello.
people do the little Indy Handshake. It was kind of stupid. So, but I get it. It's just a tradition. You got to carry on those traditions. So,
Yeah.
But that's just one of the many crazy wrestling traditions. Another thing is guys that they may be in the business longer than you, but they suck. Either they suck or they never did anything with their career, and they're trying to tell you you may have done, you may be better than them or done more with your career. And like, what the fuck can you tell me, dude? You've only wrestled this one place once a month for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I've done more matches in my first year than you have in 5 years. So, so there's that type of thing that was kind of goofy too. And just when there's goofballs too, there's goofballs that may have more time than you, and then they try to be tough. You're like, dude, you're not a tough guy. I will fuck you up right now. So you need to chill, dog. I'm about to fuck you up. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that too. I always joke about that with wrestling. When I came into wrestling, what I thought it was going to be is we're going to go to the strip club. Everyone's going to be doing cocaine and pain pills. We're going to be fucking banging chicks and stuff like that. So that's kind of the expectations I had. And then when I got into wrestling, it was not like that at all. So that was kind of a disappointment for me. I was like, oh, man, I thought we were going to be like headbutting people in the bar and fucking biting people in the nose and doing all this cool stuff I heard about growing up. But a lot of those guys were weenies, man. A lot of you pro wrestlers are weenies. You've never been in a street fight, so get your shit together.
Did anyone, especially when your size in the ring, people would think, oh, he's small, he doesn't know how to do it. Did anyone ever try to like take advantage in the ring and you had to straighten him out?
Not really. I would say the only guy that did something like that was Boom Boom Kamini, who we all know. He's one of those jabronis I was just talking about. Who shout out to Boom Boom. I mean, he was a super nice guy, but he didn't do much with his career, and he would always want to bully around the younger guys. So in training, yeah, he would be like super stiff, and he'd be like, "Was that stiff?" And I remember telling him, I guess, he's like, damn right it was. And I'm like, all right, whatever, dude. So yeah, they're just like dealing with little jokers like that. Who, again, he was a cool guy. So I don't want to bury him, but, just guys that didn't do much with their career that try to bully the younger wrestlers. But no, I didn't really deal with that. I'm cut from a different cloth, man. I came from a different background. So if anyone tried any shit like that, we got problems straight up. So. That's the background I came from, so I don't play those type of games. So be a man and talk some shit, don't try to pull a sly one.
Speaking of shit talking, you had some matches and some capacity with someone who nowadays none of his promos would ever fly, and that's Mr. Chris Bosch.
Oh yeah, Chris Bosch.
Not the basketball player, the wrestler. Yeah. Now I have to keep doing that every time I look up something about him.
Yeah. For the longest time, I kept hearing Chris Bosch. People were like on Twitter, like talking about Chris Bosch. I don't watch too much NBA, so I'm like, why the fuck's everyone always talking about Chris Bosch? He's still over? What the hell? And then I'm like, oh, he's an NBA player. All right.
Yeah. But I was like, when I was talking to Top Gun or when I was talking to Scott Lost or any of them, I would go back and I was looking at clips of them and Chris Bosch. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff he pops in promos that you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, he was racist. That was his gimmick. I don't know how else to put it. He had a racist gimmick. So yeah, wouldn't slide. Black Lives Matter. Shout out to my people. Yeah, we're gonna fuck you up, Chris Bosch. I'm gonna find you. I know you're a fireman in Texas right now. So pop off that racist shit. We're gonna find you. No, I
All
don't know.
right.
No, he was a funny guy. So shout out to Chris Bosch. I wrestled him countless times too. Um, Promos. I mean, he found out. Like I said, the name of the game is getting over. So he found out that a bunch of dorky white people like a racist character. So who's surprised?
Yeah,
Who's
true.
surprised? Yeah, yeah. So that was cool though.
All right, with that, brother, the booker has ran out. He is screaming, "Take it home, take it home." So now we're gonna take this bad boy home with some rapid fire questions. But like I said, rapid fire is a guideline. Please feel free to digress and talk as much as you want about any of this. Besides, I always consider not only is wrestling physical, I like to consider wrestling very creative. It's a very creative thing to do. You're building matches, you're building moves, you're doing all kinds of stuff. Besides wrestling, what is your creative outlet?
Man, I wish I had one right now. To be honest, I don't know, but I like to draw. I have a sketchbook right here, so I draw. I just mess around. I like art, so art. I'm
Okay.
more of a. I guess I like to watch that stuff. So yeah, I'm big into art. Still pro wrestling. I still watch pro wrestling. So as far as actually having an outlet, I'm still trying to find it, my friend. So yeah, I'll let you know. But yeah, I think that's the key to everyone's happiness. If you're able to make a lot of money doing something creative, I think that's the key to happiness. So I'm gonna keep looking, and then when I find out, I'll let you know.
And what do you think of this product today?
The product today, I'm kind of, it's okay. Yeah, it's. I think there's a lot of great guys doing a lot of great stuff. A lot of it seems the same, unfortunately. So I don't know. I just feel like everyone's good now. So when everyone's good, it's hard to stand out. So I think WWF has probably one of the greatest rosters ever assembled in professional wrestling. But for that reason, it's hard for these guys to stand out. But I think it's super good. Everyone's like really, really good now. Like they weren't 10 or 15 years ago. So like you mentioned, everyone could do everything now. So I'm a fan of the product. I watch a lot more AEW than I do WWE. I don't think I watch any WWE, but I watch a lot of AEW just because a lot of those guys were my friends at one point. So friends or
Yeah.
former colleagues. So it's cool to, like I said, see all their hard work pay off after all these years. So I like seeing guys like Sky, Scorpio Sky, who I
That's the one
wrestled.
that, as like a California indie wrestling nerd, that's the one I popped for a lot. Was when they gave that guy, a tag belt,
Yeah,
like in like the first few months of the pro. I was like, this is amazing because,
yeah.
like we all knew like, Styles and Kazarian and Daniels. Like I feel like those guys, they've been on Impact. They've been doing a lot of stuff like for a while now. NWA TNA. But then like Scorpio Sky was always like this guy where I was like, dude, this guy's amazing. How come he's not, getting on anything? And it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's one of the guys that like well deserved finally.
And I feel WWE missed the boat because fucking Harold was over when they when they had him doing those segments with Kane. Oh man, that shit was comedy. I love those segments. Sky
Yeah.
bringing back Harold. That was great, great, great stuff. Great TV. So yeah, it's cool to see them all be able to excel right now.
What was your favorite move or hold that you didn't use?
That I didn't use. Probably the curb stomp. I always loved that move. Super Dragons curb stomp. So
Mm,
it was just brutal. It was simple. I like simple, so the simpler the better. It was a simple move that was brutal, impactful. Um, yeah, so that was probably it. The curb stomp by Super Dragon. I always wanted to do a variation of it, but I never pulled it off. But yeah, shout out to Super Dragon. I did a singles match with him too. So there's a big list. I think I gave it to SoCal Uncensored when I interviewed with that website back in the day with Scrub. Shout out to Scrub at SoCal Uncensored. I gave a list of people I wanted to do singles matches with, and I think Mike Modest was on one of them. Bison Smith, I think, and Super Dragon. And I think Modest got a hold of that list, or someone had showed him that interview. And then like the next week I was booked with Modest, so that was cool. And then I got to wrestle Super Dragon, which was cool because he saw that. Super Dragon wanted to wrestle me. The way those whole relationships were built back in the day, with those SoCal guys was on AOL. So everyone used to chat on that. So we used to have group chats with a whole bunch of wrestlers. CM Punk used to stop by. A bunch of different wrestlers used to come by into these group chats that we'd be talking all night about wrestling. So that's how I established a lot of my relationships with the Southern California guys.
Speaking of Super Dragon, something he's known for is hitting pretty hard. But I'm curious, who has the hardest chop that you've taken?
Man, the hardest chop. It might be Mikey Nichols. I don't know. I mean, you should be familiar with him from NXT. I'm not sure what he went by at that federation, but he would wrestle with Shane Thorne. They went to Noah together. He's an Australian guy from Perth, Australia. Look him up. He was in WWE. He recently left, and his partner was Shane Thorne, who's still in WWE, I believe. But Mikey Nichols, he used to come out. He was one of Dave Marquez's guys, so he would travel out to live with Dave
also known as Nick Miller.
Nick Miller, yeah.
Mikey Whiplash.
Yeah, so those are his. I think Nick Miller, that's his WWE name. But yeah, I wrestled him when he came out to Southern California. He came out with Dave Marquez, who used to work with the New Japan Dojo, and then Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is what he does now. Everyone knows Dave Marquez. Shout out to Dave Marquez. Yeah. But yeah, he was a Dave Marquez guy, and I had an opportunity to wrestle him, and he hit really, really hard chops. I think I was bleeding. But I always like to wrestle those guys that chopped hard because I chopped hard too. So one of my favorite things, because I was a coward heel, was just to have these guys that chop hard throw me to the outside of the ring and just chop me all around the ring. So the fans got like this up close and personal view of me getting my ass kicked to let them go home happy. So I always had a good time wrestling Mikey Nichols with his hard chops.
You actually perfectly segued into my next question. What's the craziest fan interaction you had?
Man, all these different rats. No. We had, no, I have no idea, man. All these fans, most of them were great, you know. Yeah, I really don't have any crazy fan interactions. They're all good. Some fans grew out to be my friends, so I know that, you know, I went to a rave with one fan, which was cool. He was just some guy. I forgot what his name was. He was a Pro Wrestling Guerrilla fan, and his dad would always take him, and he was always a huge supporter of mine. So one time I'm like, hey, man, I know he goes to raves. I'm like, hey, I'm going to this rave in LA. And then he was like, okay, cool. I'll meet you there. So I hung out with him. He was a cool dude. But yeah, maybe my craziest fan interaction is with Ed Powers, the world famous pornographer. If you guys know him, Dirty Debutante series. Anyways, he's a huge wrestling fan, lo and behold. And I was at Royal Rumble in Fresno doing some extra work, and I ran into him backstage, and me being the aficionado that I was like, oh shit, that's Ed Powers right there. So I went and talked to him, and then we linked up. He started coming to all the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows. He actually managed me and Top Gun Talia for a while. And that was Ed Powers, world famous pornographer. And then we actually had a falling out, and the falling out was great because it was over a Yoshinoya Bowl. When I used to wrestle for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in Hollywood, there was a Yoshinoya like one block away. So some of the boys would sneak off, go grab some food in between shows. And I did that. I went and grabbed some, after my match, I went and grabbed some food, came back. He was my guest that day. And then I was like, he's like, where were you, bro? And I was like, oh, I just went to Yoshinoya to grab some food. And the dude freaked out. He was like, what the fuck, man? Why didn't you tell me? I'm fucking here, sitting here starving. He starts saying he's diabetic and he has low blood sugar and all this shit. Jesus. I'm like, what the fuck? So yeah, I had a falling out with Ed Powers. I never saw him after that. He called me like a week later and he badgered me on the phone for like an hour and a half. And I was working in the adult industry on the side too, doing video work for them and stuff. So he was talking about he was going to blackball me from the adult industry and do all this crazy stuff. So shout out to you, Ed Powers. No hard feelings. It's been a long time. So I hope he's well. Hope he don't end up like Ron Jeremy, who's in prison right now. So
yeah, there's some stuff going on there. That's for sure.
Yeah. But he's kind of from the same ilk. He's cut from the same cloth. So I wish him luck in his future endeavors.
What was it like doing the extra work?
Well, to be honest, I only did it twice. I did a Raw, and I did that that Fresno show. It was okay. I really didn't know what to expect or how to act or how to behave. So it kind of just felt like I was walking on eggshells back there. It's when they had first instituted like the dress code. Remember, for a while you had to wear like a suit to come to WWE. And me being broke, like I said, I was working at Target. I didn't really have much dress clothes, so I wore like khakis and a button-up shirt. And I remember the first thing the security guard told me was like, "Oh, so I guess no one told you about the dress code, huh?" And I'm like, "This is the nicest clothes I got, bro. I don't know what the fuck you. I don't have a suit, So yeah, it wasn't bad though. But yeah, I wish I would have not been schooled on how to act, but I wish I would have just known how to act better. I didn't introduce myself to anyone. I kind of just played, in the background and just kept to myself. I think I was there with, I think it was Davey Richards was there and maybe Tony Kazina. I don't know. Small, weird group because we're all little short guys. So a bunch of short guys showing up to a WWE show. I didn't get used that night either because I think they needed druids. I didn't have black boots. I brought, at the time I was in wrestling shoes and wasn't the look they were going for. But at that time, as soon as you walked in, you signed in and they wrote you a check right there. And then we just hung out in catering, ate food. And then I did a Raw in San Jose too. That was last minute. Donovan just said, "Hey, they need some people. Get down here as quick as you can." And then by the time I got there, they had filled the role. So that was it though. I did a SmackDown or Raw in San Jose and then Royal Rumble in Fresno. But it was the Royal Rumble where Vince blew out both his knees. So that was interesting to see backstage when that happened. So he came back. Everyone was like, "What the fuck?" Everyone was like, "Is that real?" And then he came back. I think they wheeled him back in a wheelchair. And everyone was like, "Oh shit, Vince is really fucked up." Another crazy thing too for all the wrestlers, they probably met Ric Flair, but Ric Flair's huge. I didn't think he was gonna be huge, but Ric Flair is a big fucking dude, and he's wide. He's like this wide, buff, fucking old man. So that was cool too. Yeah. I was a huge Ric Flair fan, so just being able to see him in person, like, oh shit, this is a big fucking athletic dude that's like in his 60s. So that was cool too.
Yeah. Besides hurting you, what was the worst thing someone could do if you're working with them in a match?
Not sell for me. You mentioned someone earlier. I'm not going to bury him, but I remember in the match, he wasn't selling for me and I got pissed off, because if a heel's putting heat on you, and you're trying to make a little comeback and the heel's not selling your comeback, and then just cuts you back off, he's making you look like a piece of shit, so
yeah.
That kind of pissed me off. So I remember I elbowed him a bunch of times and then I lariated him in the face. And after the match, he's like, "Damn, Hook, you broke my jaw." And hey, buddy, you should have sold for me, So yeah, he didn't sell my. When you have a little
sell,
I'm
gonna make you sell.
Yeah, you got to do something, man, because you're not gonna make me look like a fucking weakling either. So, yeah, that's probably the worst thing someone could do is not sell your offense, because it makes them look like a piece of shit if they end up beating you. I'm a nobody because I can't even hurt you, and then makes me look like a piece of shit that I can't hurt this guy that's doesn't even look athletic. So.
Was there a time that you were working with someone and you were legitimately surprised by their work? Like either, you heard such great things and then when you were in the ring with them, you're like, I fucking hate working with this guy. Or, the other way, the more positive way, which is like you worked with someone and you were like, oh, wow, this person's so crisp, so fluid. Like everything they do is gold. Like what, you were just amazed.
Yeah, I always tell this to people that don't wrestle because fans always have a lot of opinions. And of course they should. I mean, they're the consumer of the product. But a lot of times the fans think certain people are good. But then when you wrestle with them, it's clunky or it's not easy to wrestle, or you have to remember so many things. They don't actually know how to work. They just memorize stuff. So there were times where you'd be going up against someone who the fans loved, and then when you wrestled them, you're like, wow, he's really not that fun to wrestle. And then that was one of the reasons why I really loved EWF, is because a lot of those guys that were unknown guys, they just worked EWF shows for Jesse, and they were his guys that he trained. They were just really easy to work with, and they were fun to work with. And, we had simple matches. They were real simple, not a lot of spots, but we got the reaction we wanted. So that was always what I really loved, is being able to wrestle these guys without a big name and just get a good reaction from the crowd, doing easy stuff. So I was always surprised when we were able to pull that off.
So I kind of already know the answer to this because we kind of touched on it. Has a booker tried to stiff you on money? And obviously, as you said, that they definitely tried. But what were some of the other part I love about this is what are some of the funnier excuses that they try to give you?
It's always the same. Like the house wasn't as good as we thought, brother. The house wasn't as good as we thought. I think it was, there was a guy in Southern California. I remember he booked me, and then I got Apollo booked, and he tried to stiff Apollo, so we had to punk him out, and he ended up paying us. And then there was this what was that guy? And he was in Sacramento, this real jabroni promoter. I don't want to say his name and then it not be him. Does Will Loudon, does that run a name?
That sounds familiar.
Might have been Will Loudon. If Will Loudon's someone else and I'm burying some random person, sorry. But there was some guy, some jabroni promoter in Sacramento that ran a show. And yeah, he just straight up stiffed us. I think he stiffed everyone, if I remember correctly. He left because he couldn't pay anyone. So for some reason, he had a lot of memorabilia, a lot of wrestling memorabilia that he sold at the shows as his merch table. So I think we helped ourselves to some of these old WWE stuff because, like I said, I got to get paid, man.
Yeah.
F you, pay me, that's how it goes. So
exactly.
Make sure I get my bread at the end of the show. Otherwise, we got problems.
What's the hardest you laughed at an indie show?
The hardest I laughed? I don't know, man. I didn't really laugh too much. Probably, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, when Teddy Hart came out, he brought in these two jabroni guys with him. I think it was like Chronic and Hydro or something. They had some sort of like weed names or something. And then the commentators just buried him the whole time because they were wearing these outrageous outfits, and they just called him Oven Mitt 1 and Oven Mitt 2. I think it was Excalibur. So, man, we were all laughing at that. That was hilarious. So that was Teddy Hart and his guys that he brought down from Canada. Again, I think it was Hydro and Chronic, maybe something like that.
Yeah, there's always
Oven
fun.
Mitt, also known as Oven Mitt 1 and Oven Mitt 2.
Yeah, there's everyone always has fun Teddy Hart stories. That's always something going on there.
Good for that. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the worst gimmick you remember seeing on the indie scene?
Horrible gimmicks. The gimmick I always hated because it was so prevalent is the unattractive ladies man. I don't know. You see that everywhere, the guy with the feather boa, pretty boy, beautiful, whatever their names might be. I always hated that gimmick, so that's always one of my least favorite. I think it's cheap. It's just unoriginal, cheap. So there's a few of those that I ran into over the years that I thought were bad. And to be honest, I didn't like the Chupacabra when he first started, just the actual gimmick. But he did so much with it, and I thought he did a great job. So, but I remember when he first came out, I was like, the Chupacabra, that's kind of dumb. But it ended up working out for him, and he did good with the gimmick. But I remember when he first started, I was like, man, that's a dumb gimmick. But it ended up he made it good. So.
Any any former WWF, WCW, ECW, whatever, XPW, any guys that worked on a show, the same show as you, not necessarily with you, and they thought they were bigger than the show, acted like they were bigger than the show, just really rubbed you the wrong way? No. Everyone
was cool. Yeah. I mean, I remember I wasn't intimidated by New Jack, but I didn't really want to talk to New Jack in case he did start talking shit, and then we got a problem. And I'm like, man, I don't want to fight New Jack, So I remember doing a show with New Jack, and he kind of stuck to himself. He was abrasive, loud, but that was to be expected, But I remember I didn't want to, ruffle his feathers and get into anything with him. But no, everyone was super nice. Yeah, I remember we did bring in Joe Applebaum when he was doing Pogo the Clown in XPW, and he had a lot of bad reputation because I guess Rob Black, the old promoter, used to have him go out there and beat people up for him. He was like his little henchman. So I remember they booked me with him at a Pro Wrestling Iron show, and I remember just being scared. But to my surprise, he was super nice. He pulled me to the side. He's like, hey, listen, I could see you're super nervous. Like, I'm not going to hurt you. I know what you saw in XPW. But I was just doing, they paid me to do that. So that's what I was doing. And he put me at ease, and it was a real super easy match. So yeah, that was kind of the opposite. I was expecting him to be a dick, and he was
Yeah.
super nice. And then, trying to think of who else I've done shows with, but yeah, everyone's been super nice. I know that we brought in Spike Dudley for training at Iron. We brought in Crash Holly. Crash Holly was super intense, so I thought that was cool because he was kind of playful when you watched him wrestle, but when he talked to us, he was super intense. And again, that was another sad thing. We did have Crash Holly was going to come and be our full-time trainer at Pro Wrestling Iron after he got released from WWE, and then he tragically passed away. So he was really good friends with the owners of the company, so I think that affected people a lot too, along with the passing of Bison. So having two people pass away so closely together who were really integral parts of the business, that was tough. So Crash Holly was super cool, Spike. So most of the old WWE guys I've dealt with have been super cool. I know that Paul London actually lived in my hometown because he was dating a wrestler that lived out here in Riverside. And so I went to a couple parties with him and stuff, and he was cool too. So yeah, everyone I've met from WWE has been super nice. Sometimes it's the jabronis, the little local jabronis that that think they're shit don't stink. So
yeah, I really like Crash. He was there for when I did my tryout at Iron, and then he was like one of the judges for the tryout. And
okay.
then
I was there too, buddy.
Yeah. He praised my promo skills, so that was the good thing.
Oh, nice.
3, 2, 1. I'm here today to try out for Pro Wrestling Iron. Pro Wrestling Iron has all the talent, the high-flying ability, but it doesn't have the natural charisma that I have. Bison Smith, 2 words for you, super cuts. You need to understand something here, buddy. In Templeluca, Mexico, this Sunday, me and you are gonna go at it, and I'm gonna say, Bison, I'm gonna come after you, and you're gonna get it. 1, 2, 3, and that's all I got to say about that.
How much time? That was pretty good. What town?
Templeluca,
Mexico.
Yes.
Nice.
That was the only thing I did good in that whole tryout. I failed
at the start. It's the most important thing. You know, it's the most important thing. So,
but I cut a good promo, and I was like, and then that was the only thing I did. But then I went to the memorial, and I think you went to that too.
Yeah, Pacifica, I believe.
Yeah, and Pacifica in that big church. Yeah, that was really sad. That was he wasn't like, he took it. I think that's what I actually appreciated, was like how seriously he took that, like that tryout, especially. Like, he just came from the WWE. Like, he could have really just kind of showed up, said his hellos and just kind of chilled and not really done anything. And everyone still would have appreciated of having him be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And instead he was like, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to actually judge these people. I'm going to like he was very like into it. And I was like, that's kind of refreshing to see.
Yeah. And he gave me such good advice that I carried on through the rest of my career I don't know if it was the seminar or tryout. Whenever I dealt with him, he was helping us train. And one thing he taught us about was just a heat spot. He was like, hey, what's your guys' favorite heat spot? And we were all saying, oh, like forearms, chops. He's like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, your favorite cutoff spot. What is it, that you do to cut, if you're a heel, to cut off the babyface opponent? And he kind of just schooled us on basically the art of that, how to try to do it underhandedly, and do all this stuff. And when I became a coward heel later in EWF, I always remembered like, oh yeah, my cutoff has to be, some cheap heat to cut this guy off, so I could establish myself as a heel. And I learned that from Crash Holly, and also selling, because Crash Holly would say, you have this whole ring to sell. You guys are taking a punch and just staying in the corner. So that was something that I always tried to do too, is sell all the way around the ring. So take a punch and don't just take it in the corner. Take the punch and then try to escape to the other corner. Why are you just going to sit in one corner and let this guy punch you? So try to get around. And then that was something I always got complimented on too later in my career, as well. You really sell your ass off. And I'd be like, yeah, I like to use the whole ring to sell. So
yeah.
And I learned that from Crash, just from his one day there. So I can only imagine how much more we could have learned if he hadn't passed away. So,
any embarrassing stories that came out of wrestling that you were involved with? Anything, something you were like, but wrestlers or like pranks or anything, wrestlers can be vicious sometimes. Anything like that?
Yeah, but to me it was kind of like they were bullying some kids, so
Mm.
I remember they did put what was that guy's name? He was a Sacramento guy. He was this little guy with this little curly hair. Kryptonite. Do you remember Kryptonite?
Yes.
Yeah, Kryptonite. Yeah, I remember they put dog shit in his car, and I mean it was funny because it smelled. But
Mhm.
I never liked bullying people. I'm not a bully, so
Yeah.
I thought it was also kind of mean. But no, nothing that sticks out as no big pranks or anything like that. Have some inappropriate stuff that happened that not into because we're all married now and stuff. But yeah, there's some stuff. We had to share hotel rooms and stuff, so you could only imagine the
Yeah.
shenanigans. Yeah.
And this is the final question. This is, I like to call it the touchy-feely question of the podcast. Basically, it's your pure joy in pro wrestling. The thing, whether it's before the match, during the match, after the match, you get the goosebumps, you feel it, and you're like, this is why I fucking love this business. This is why I fucking love wrestling.
Okay. Yeah. For me, that was kind of something that I learned towards the end, like I was saying, was just getting the reaction that you wanted, that you envisioned. So going in the back, putting together your match and thinking, it's all going to lead up to this point. And at this point, this is the reaction we want to get. And then when you're able to go out into the ring and accomplish that goal and get the reaction at the end of the match that you're looking for, that's always what I love. So, like I said, just wrestling. Yeah, it's all about just getting the reaction. So when you got the reaction that you were actually going for and aiming for, that's what would bring me joy, and that's what I love so much. And still to this day, I work in the corporate world now, but before that, it was, there's still nothing can replace wrestling in front of a live crowd for me. So I haven't been happy for the last 10 years now, but yeah, there hasn't been. I haven't been able to replace that with anything else. So like I said, I'm still looking for my next creative outlet, but yeah, that was really it. Just when everything came together and you got the right reaction out of your crowd, out of the live crowd, is what I really loved.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being on the podcast. You're a
No
great
problem, Paul.
guest. One thing, normally I would say at this point, I would say if you were an active wrestler, I'd say, put yourself over as and promote yourself. But
Yeah.
in lieu of that, please tell anyone if they're not familiar with the great Hook Bomberry, what matches should they look up that you think would really just embody who you were as a wrestler and some of your best work?
I would say check out my whole EWF run. So if you just want to try to find that on YouTube, just put Hook Bomberry versus any of those EWF shows. Their full shows pop up, but then they have their time stamped in the description area. So just check it out. Check out my timestamps on all those. So I had a tag team title run there, a U.S. American title or U.S. title run there. Wrestled a lot of great people. One match that I know is on there that has a lot of well-known people in it nowadays is it was me and Rocky Romero versus TJP and Jack Evans from EWF. So that should be on there. Check out that match. It's easy to find. And again, once Jesus Cruz puts up my match with Bison Smith, check that out. Keep in mind that was only my fourth singles match, so it's not my greatest performance, but it was still a great match because Bison was leading the dance. And of course, my PWG run, I would say to check out my later PWG stuff when I was teaming with TJP to finally see my final form as a pro wrestler. That was it. Wrestling with TJP. That was me at the end of my career. So check that stuff out as well. And if you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, it's at Cali Revolt. So CALI Revolt. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. If I don't recognize you on Instagram, I might not add you. So I'm sorry, but you could send me a message or something. I'll try to approve that message.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, Paul, and all the wrestling fans out there. I miss you guys. I love you. So thanks for all the support throughout my career. I appreciate it. And, who knows, maybe one day I'll be a referee or something. Who knows?